Hello, it's me, and I'd like to start getting into a couple of different concepts, something a little new. I went through a cuboid classification series, which for me was a lot of fun to do. I got to show a lot of different puzzles, but what I'd like to do now is delve into supercuboids and the different strategies. Or in other words, this center can only be rotated in a certain way, but with a regular puzzle, it can be rotated anyway. So how would that translate into the supercubes? Well, into the cuboids, rather, the supercuboids. I'm going to start off with this. This is, as you can see, Rafael Gulluni. He's expert modifier. All of his puzzles are handcrafted. If you look over here, this is actually modified from 3x3x2, much like this one. They're not three-dimensionally printed. He is delving into that, but they're very, very high-quality puzzles. So if anyone is interested in any of his work or any of his puzzles or would like to get more information, let me know, because it is my want and my desire to make him much more known and to allow him to share more of his puzzles. So I'm going to be highlighting a lot of his works of art. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going through a series of a variety of different types of supercuboids: 3x3x2, 3x3x4, 3x3x5, 4x4x6, which will be revealed as I do them. So when looking at this, the reason why this is a supercuboid is, first of all, as you can see, it's a fissure. So fissure cubes are a little bit skewed here. We have edges here, corners here. In this case, this is actually not an edge, and these are not corners. These are edges, and these are corners, and that's because it turns from this face, much like, you know, any other fissure cube. So the fissure cuboid does something similar. So we have to bear that in mind. We already have an issue with perspective with that. This particular puzzle, and let me know if anybody is interested in this particular puzzle, as I may be able to finagle my way into getting you one. But in any case, this was brilliantly designed to become a fissured 3x3x2. But if you look at the stickers, to make it even more of a supercube, he made it to where the orientation actually has meaning with this. We're going to look at the algorithms that are used to solve a 3x3x2 and how we have to variate them when doing a supercuboid, because I can't use exactly the same ones, because now they're going to start messing with the orientation. So we're going to get into that a little bit. The way this works here is, you can see this light blue matches up with this edge over here, and I'm putting all the same colored corners to the right. I could have put it to the left. I just chose to do to the right. Same thing here. This turquoise, dark blue, and light blue. What do I call this? Light blue? I'll call that baby blue. Anyway, it matches up the same on the bottom over here. So let's see what happens when we first off try to apply the regular cuboid strategy to a supercuboid. Then I'm going to challenge you to try to figure out, or help me figure out, how I will variate it in terms of solving this. And what you're going to find is that I'm not going to propose any new algorithms to do it, but we're going to have to look at all the effects that the known algorithms have on the puzzle and how we can variate the strategies. So I'm just going to show the motion here. Again, very high quality puzzles. So the movement here is excellent. This puzzle loves to move. Now the thing about this is, you can tell when it's scrambled, but it's more of a subtle thing, because you can see that there's different, just the way the color scheme is with this. But we'll scramble it like so, just to show the motion. And we're gonna follow along with this as well. So I'm gonna scramble both. Abracadabra. Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start to apply the usual strategies that I would do with this, and just show you what will happen if I do that, and how I can't. We're going to be utilizing our knowledge of the law of cubes as well to figure out what kind of moves we can expect. So to start off with a solve, once again with the 3x3x2, we start off by placing one side, and this is done fairly intuitively. I'm going to say pick the yellow side down here, and I'll just put my centers in. So I'm just going to put this here. Now what goes opposite green? Well, if you didn't know what goes opposite green, you can always look at the corners. So if this is green, yellow, just to the left of it is red. So I'll just find a red and place it here. Now with these type of domino cuboids, we can we have to coordinate things from one layer to the next. So turn this over here. So red opposite orange, blue opposite green, and things should be lined up correctly. Just to the right of green is going to be orange, and there it is over here. Okay, so that's no problem. And then on the corners here, I have to move it from the top to the bottom. From the top to the bottom is a pretty simple algorithm. Line it up. Here's the red and green. Put this just above here and do 2R U, 2R UI, 2R. To those that have followed the cuboid classification, this is all review, but we're going to see how it applies to this. Then on the bottom here, we have this green and red. Put this right above here, so this is going to swap down to over here. Now, here's a question that some of you might have. When referring to the law of cubes, remember I can only do an even number swaps. So you may ask the question, well, how can I just swap these two? That's an odd number swap. And the reason is that's not the only thing that's happening. Because what's happening is that when I swap these two, notice these two are also swapping. The reason why it's important to bear that in mind is when you run into trouble with your new modification puzzle, whether it's a sticker mod or anything like that, by bearing these things in mind, you need to know every effect that your algorithm has, including the other effects that is independent of the intended effect, because that effect might become useful for you later. That's how I'm able to apply the same algorithms to different puzzles. In my crazy Megaminx and my crazy 3x3 Plus series, I use that a lot, where I just use the same algorithms and said, well, what did it do to the other things and how can I use that? So notice what's going to happen is that the red, white, and blue that's on the left back is going to end up on the right back. 2R U, 2R UI, 2R. And here's red, white, and blue, so it did flip these two. Could that be useful at some point? Well, we'll see. But in any case, it did flip these guys. So now this green and yellow is going to come here, and hence these two are going to be flipped as well. So this red, white, and blue is now going to be here. 2R U, 2R UI, 2R. And there it is here. So what this just goes to show that it's still obeying the law of cubes. Although something appears to be scrambled, there is a consistency to it. And that consistency is something we're going to capitalize on. So 1, 2 swaps. And what that did is that gave me my bottom layer, just by doing this switching over here. The top layer, I have ways of swapping corners and swapping edges. Now what's interesting is that when I swap edges, it does not affect my corners. But when I swap corners, it does affect my edges, which means I have to put the corners in first and not care what happens to the edge. And then I do my edges because it does not affect the corners. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look here and see what kind of a conformation that I have. I have 3 possibilities, and this is purely based upon known laws of the cube regarding the ability to swap only even number of pieces. And that's going to be either 2 corners are going to be in, all corners are going to be in, or no corners are in. Now here's the reason why that works. Those of you who know what the corner swapping algorithm is, what it appears to do is these two stay the same and these two swap by the end of that. To which case you might say, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense because I thought you weren't supposed to do an even number swaps. But let's see what happens. So right now none of these corners are in. So I'm just going to randomly pick one and do a corner swap. And what's going to appear to happen is these two are going to swap. So these two are going to stay the same, and this red, white, and blue is going to end up here, and this white, blue, and orange is going to come over here with these staying exactly the same, with the same association with each other. So these are going to stay next to each other, but when these guys flip, these blues are going to be facing the same way so that these are going to be in. That's what's going to appear to happen. So let's try and see what happens with that. So corner swap, remember the color schemes and remember what's going to be next to each other. 2R U, 2R UI, 2R. Then we rotate the entire puzzle here counterclockwise. Then we do 2R UI, 2R U, 2R. So predictably, the 2 blues did flip-flop. When they flip-flopped, the 2 blues ended up next to each other. So these 2 flip-flopped, and these 2 maintained their association with each other. So this stayed here, the orange, green, and white here, and here the red, green, and white stayed over here. So these kept their associations with each other. These 2 flip-flopped and gave me this color over here, gave me these 2 blues. Now, here's my question. My question is, how could that occur? If I can't do an odd number of swaps, how did I swap this and not change anything else? None of these guys changed. These two didn't seem to change. This didn't change. So how did that happen? How could this hold to the law of cubes when I just got done saying that you could only do an odd number swap, an even number swap, and I just did an odd number swap? Did I just completely disprove that theorem? So what I want you to do is stop the video for a second and see if you can figure it out and see exactly what happened. So, did you do it? Did you stop the camera? Did you stop the film? Or did you just plod on ahead? Well, it doesn't matter. But in essence, what happened now is I take this, the one that has the two corners in, turn it toward that's at the right, and if I do another swap, I know that the orange has to be over here, and it's here. So these two will swap, these oranges will be next to each other, this will come over here, so these reds will be next to each other, and all of my corners will be in. What's more, if I were to move this over here, all the oranges will be next to each other appropriately, and this red will be over here, and these two greens will have swapped, so the greens will be facing out. So how did that happen? How do I know that's going to occur? And the answer is it didn't actually proceed the way that you think it did. I didn't actually swap these two in the way that it appears to. Remember how I said that when I did the 2RU, 2RUI, 2R, it caused these two to swap and these two to swap? Well, when I do just the opposite of that, if I do 2R, UI, 2R, U, 2R, what that's going to do is that's going to cause these two to swap and these two to swap. So let's imagine what happens. This is how we kind of cheated, well, not cheated our way through, but how we got through that algorithm. I did a 2R, U, 2R, UI, 2R, which caused these two to swap and these two to swap. I then turned the puzzle 90 degrees here, and I did the opposite. What that did is it caused these two to swap and these two to swap. Now if you can imagine what happens, the end result is these two swapped, I turned it here, and then they swapped back, which means this piece never changed positions. But these guys, how do they change positions? Well, when I did the first part of the algorithm, these two swapped. Then when I turned it here, these two swapped, which means the overall effect is this stayed exactly where it is, and then these two swapped, and these two swapped. So what does that mean? Well, what that means is that the overall effect of that algorithm, the quote corner swapping algorithm, is actually this stays the same, and I did 1, 2 swaps. I didn't really swap these two, I swapped these two. 1, 2. So in reality, what happened is that this went to here, this went to here, and this went to here. So what that's going to do is these two will still be in association with each other. They'll just be flipped over to here, and this guy will come over to here. But because this is the white, yellow, and green, this went over to here to where this green will end up over to here. But by the end of the algorithm, I'll be turned in this direction, so it will have appeared that even though this stays the same, and this ended up here, because I'm now holding it here, it will have appeared that they swapped here. So it was really a 3 cycle, a plain old 3 cycle. And actually what's happening is that you're just transitioning. These two transition to here, this transition to here, and at the end of the day, that means all of these sides are in. So let's take another look at what's happening here. 2R, U, 2R, UI, 2R. Now I'm going to turn the puzzle here, 2R, UI, 2R, U, 2R. And sure enough, it looks like these two swapped. Because we're so used to this being on the left side, right, on the left side, that we forgot that we turned it. Because in reality, we started here. It's no longer on the left side. It's now over here. This stayed exactly where I started, and this transitioned to here. So that's how that works. And the corners will automatically be calibrated. So this thing that I've always called an adjacent corner swap is actually not a corner swap. Now the reason why I went into such gross details of that is because that's going to be important in solving a supercuboid, because that aspect of it is actually going to be important. Because what is that going to be in conjunction with the center? Well, when I finished in this position, thinking it was the same as this position, I it didn't really matter to me because the center here doesn't have a particular configuration. But if it did, I cannot say that this position is the same as this position. I can if this is one color, but I can't if it's not. And I'll have an example of that. The next step after that is of course going to be the edge swaps over here. So to do this, we have adjacent edge swaps. And what that's going to do is either swap these two or these two. So the first one is going to swap these two. So I'm going to go ahead and do the algorithm, and these two will swap. 2R, 2U, 2R, 2U, 2R, 2U. And now what you see is green is here, yellow is here, and these two have not changed. And no more is it apparent of this strange exception to the rule than when you do the last two swaps, because what I'm going to do is swap these two. It's an odd number swap. How can that be? Well, I showed that with the corner swapping, it really wasn't a swap at all. It was a 3 cycle. But let's see what happens here. Is anything else going to be affected? 2R, U, 2R, U, 2R, 2U, 2R, 2U, 2R, U, 2R, UI, 2R, and oh my gosh, I just did an odd layer swap. So how did that happen? How could that happen? Well, let's apply every principle we just did to this fissured cuboid, this supercuboid, and see what happens. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to walk you through the normal solve as we did this and see what kind of pitfalls we walk into and then how we might be able to work our way through it. So the first step is, once again, we'll pick a bottom layer and we'll put that in. So we'll do this here. So I'm going to want to put, say, normal blue with a normal blue here. Just turn it down, turn it in, there it is. How about a dark blue? So this is the easy part. We'll just turn it in, bang, there it is. Great. How about this turquoise? Here's a turquoise here, turn that in. Now we're cruising. And now we'll do a light blue. We'll do this one, and pow. Okay, so we see these are lined up here. Now I have to put the corners in. I'm going to define the solve state with this as having the corner of the same color just to the right of it. So remember, these are edges, these are corners, and I'm going to go ahead and do the corner swap. What's going to happen is that this is going to come down here. So these two are going to swap. I also know, for whatever it's worth, these two are going to swap as well. So I'm going to do the same algorithm. 2R U, 2R UI, 2R, and there it is. These two swapped, but who cares? How about over here? This is already in. We want to get the dark blue, which is right here. Same thing. 2R U, 2R UI, 2R. Okay, this is in. Now just the normal blue. 2R U, 2R UI, 2R. Okay, we're cruising. Now, believe it or not, this is my accepted solve state with the color of the corners just to the right of the color of the edges lined up with the color of the centers. Now for the second layer, the next layer. Well, to do this, remember we did the corners first. Now these corners happen to have one color instead of 3. That doesn't matter. What really makes this more the supercuboid, because it's a 3x3x2, is this different colored center. And we can even line up these colored centers here. This is the fixed state that this has to be. This dark blue lined up with this. I don't have a way of actually swapping this. The law of cubes is hitting me right in the head right now. Because the law of the cube state, well, you can't really do that because you never did that to begin with. You 3-cycled it. And I can't get a good 3-cycle with this. Now you may say, well, can I just position it in a situation where it can 3-cycle everything in? Well, if I do it again, this will end up here, so it'll be in. This will end up here, it'll be out. And this will end up here, and it'll be in. So these two will be in if I do it again. 2R U, 2R UI, 2R, turn it here. 2R UI, 2R U, 2R. Now I'm not going to move it. I'm going to keep this in association here. This is predictably in, this is predictably in, but these two are out. Now normally it would be easy. I'd quote 2-cycle this, but it's not going to work. Because the actual situation, if I wanted to keep the centers here, is this will come over here and be out, this will come over here and be out, and this will come over here and be out. And so will this. If I turn it like this, they'll all be in. But the centers will be out. So we got to abandon that. Forget about it. That's when you make the horrible realization that your previous strategies are just not going to work. But here's how I get through it. What I'm going to do first is you have to put all the centers in appropriately. So I'm going to actually, I think I call them centers, I'm going to put the edges in appropriately. So you can see that they're not exactly where they need to be. Now, could I put these edges in without affecting the bottom here? Do I have to start over? And the answer is, well, let's see what we can do. What needs to go where? Well, this is where it needs to be, so that's pretty good. What if I were to just swap? What if I swapped these two? If I swap these two, this will end up here and this will end up here. Then I can swap these two so that I can eventually put this here and this here. So that sounds pretty good. We'll go ahead and swap to get this to here. So lining it up here, we'll go 2RU, 2RU, 2R, 2U, 2R, 2U, 2RU, 2RUI, 2R. Well, great. This is here, and up. Look at our centers. The center, this light blue, or actually this regular blue, is now opposite where this is. This center rotated 90 degrees. By this center rotating 90 degrees, that happens anytime I do a middle swap. So this answers that question. How could you swap two edges and only two edges? So the question was, how was I able to swap this? Now we see. Because what happened is that we didn't just swap these two edges. What we also did is we also rotated this center by 90 degrees. So a rotation of 90 degrees counts as one whole swap. So that's why you're able to get away with this. You're not exactly just swapping these two, you're also rotating the center, but in a normal cuboid, you won't really care because it doesn't matter. One side, one rotation is like another. So now we have to keep that in mind. So now we have to bear that in mind. But because of the law of cubes, I know I'm not going to end up with a situation that's going to be out. So these two got swapped. This needs to rotate by 180 degrees. Well, that's no problem. I'm going to just swap these two. So I'll hold this over here, do an adjacent edge swap. These two will swap. This will rotate 180 degrees, and everything will be fine. So 2R, U, 2R, U, 2R, 2U, 2R, 2U, 2R, U, 2R, UI, 2R. And here we see edge, 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 and the centers are just fine. So the first variation in a supercuboid of a 3x3x2, and you can apply this whether you want to do a shape mod or just a sticker mod, which is easy enough to do, is instead of doing the edges first, or rather the corners first, you've got to put the edges first. Because only by doing that are you going to help calibrate that. But how do we deal with these guys now? What are we going to do to get these in? And you can see that these two need to swap. I need to get this here and this here. So how am I going to do that? I can't just swap those. It's not going to work that way. So what can I do? Okay, so now that I have the edges in place, how am I going to get the corners in? Well, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to kind of cheat a little bit, and I'm going to use a swapping technique because I'm going to use the fact that I have equivalent colors, equivalent corners on the bottom side. So here's how I'm going to do that. This is my independent variable over here, the bottom part. This is my dependent variable. I'm going to switch that. I'm going to turn it over here and basically make this more the dependent variable. So what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to start transferring things down to the bottom from the top over here. What I'm going to do is every time I do a corner swap, these two are going to swap and these two are going to swap. So that way it maintains the law of cubes, even number swaps. So I have to bear that in mind. So what belongs down here? Well, this should come down over to here. So I'm just going to put it down there. Now in so doing, I'm going to mess these two up and put this up here, but that's okay, because once I put this up here, I can now bring it down to anywhere that I need over here. In this case, I need to bring it to here and it'll reset everything back. And I'm just going to keep doing that until it's solved. Now because this only has so many scrambled states, there is no parity with this puzzle. Because there's no parity, it will work out. It has to by necessity. So let's take this, which is the solved layer, and I'm going to use this to solve this layer by bringing this down to here, which is where it belongs. So 2R U, 2R UI, 2R. So that's good over here. Now it did bring this up here, and it did flip-flop these two, but my centers are exactly the same, and these guys didn't change. So now that I've done that, remember this belongs with this one, and this one actually belongs here. Now that I've done that, I'm going to take this and put it where it belongs, which is right over here, which is going to be on the bottom, to the right of this. I'm going to keep this steady because the next algorithm will bring this back. So I'm going to move this over here, and now this gets brought down to here, which will bring this one up here, ready to go where it needs needs over here. 2R U, 2R UI, 2R. So now this is in its proper place. This has been rotated back, and everything is fine. So now I can bring this over here. So we can see this is okay and this is okay on the bottom. Now I have to do the same thing over here. So where does this belong? Well, this one belongs over here. So as you can see, this is not in the right place. Eventually this blue needs to come up. So I'm going to turn this over here, and this will bring this one down and this one back up, and this will be out. So let's see what happens with that. 2R U, 2R UI, 2R. So this is where it needs to be, but we still have this out. So where does this need to be? Well, this is good, this is good, this is good, and this appears to be good. So if you notice, this bottom is now solved. But that's okay, because if I come over to here, all that's going to happen is these are going to flip-flop, which is fine. This will still be solved. This will be up here, but these two are now going to flip-flop, so this will be right next to this one over here. And then the whole thing will be solved. So I'm going to use the equivalency of these pieces to actually kind of cheat my way through this a little bit. 2R U, 2R UI, 2R, and there it is. And now the puzzle becomes solved. So you can see all the edges are in, corners are in, edge, corner, corner, and the centers are just fine as well. So what I did is I just used the equivalencies of colors, and I used the known effects that it's going to have on this, and I had the faith that because this is just a 3x3x2, there should be no parity involved with this, it will just work out. So that's how you can apply cuboid strategy to a supercuboid without any new algorithms. So I invite you to either, number one, take your 3x3x2 and make it into a mod. Get out your Dremel, get out your saw or whatever, turn it into something else, or just make some stickers, different stickers, and see how that works for you. This puzzle, if anyone's interested in this, which is a fantastic modification, let me know, and I'll see what I can work out. What we're going to do next is we're going to apply the concepts to a supercuboid of the variety of the 3x3x4, and I will show you what that puzzle is next. Thanks for watching.